This is spatchcock chicken 2 ways. Now the 2 ways is going to be what the rub I use and the way I cook them. The brine is going to be the same. When you make a brine, you start out with a little bit of warm water, you add the salt, sugar, and the other ingredients, you mix it up, and then I like to add cold water or ice to it to cool it down. You can't put anything in a brine till it's ice cold. You could just make it ahead and refrigerate it overnight, that'll be fine. But it's nice to rush it up a little bit. So I'm starting out with 2 quarts of warm, hot water. Doesn't have to be boiling hot. It needs to be warm enough so that when I put the sugar and the salt in, it'll melt it. Sugar and salt. This is how you make a brine. Approximately 1 gallon of water to approximately 1 cup of kosher salt. You want to be technical about it, figure out the weight, and that's the way to do it. But you've got to put a full cup of salt in with a gallon of water or it won't work. So you can't make a less salty brine. It just won't be a brine then. The way a brine works, the salty water goes into the meat, takes some of the flavor with it, moisture in there. You know, if you want to read the technical stuff, go for it. But you can't use less salt. It's that simple. Now you can change everything else. This is sugar. You typically want about a cup of sugar to offset the saltiness of the salt, frankly. But in this case, I've gone a little heavy. I'm calling this my sweet chicken brine. This is about 1 1/3 cups of sugar in the raw. And that's what you need to melt. So that's all you really need to make a brine, but you usually want to add some flavors to it. So I've got a few things here. I've got onion powder. For this gallon of brine, it's a 1/4 cup. And this is granulated garlic. I prefer the granulated, that's just what we had on hand. The onion powder's fine. And then I've got 2 tablespoons of black pepper in a cool big green egg shot glass. All right, now that's all I'm putting in. It's just those simple ingredients. If you want to add something different, you can. You could have used lemon pepper. You could add some thyme, some herbs in there. It'd be nice if you want to put some cayenne. That would crank it up a little bit. This is a basic brine, though, and that's all I really wanted today. But now I need to get the water all the way up. I've only put in 2 quarts, and this is a 1 gallon brine. So what I'm going to do is put just flat old ice in there. So you can see I've got this nice container that's got numbers on it, so I can see that I've got about a gallon of brine now. If you're doing it at home in a big bowl or a container that doesn't have this on there, you'll want to measure everything. You just put the ice in there and just make sure you put the water in so you have like a slushy water brine so you get the right amount, because it's kind of a technical thing. The 1 cup of salt to 1 gallon of water has got to be right. Now, this is obviously cold quickly, but you still want to refrigerate it. Put it in the fridge for at least a couple hours, preferably overnight. This has got to be ice cold before you put the chicken in. Now it's time for the chickens. These are whole chickens. These are probably about 3.5 pounds each. Try not to get them big giant ones because they just take a long time to cook. These are real nice. I'm going to do what we call spatchcock. It's not that secret of a word anymore. Everybody's kind of familiar with it. Butterflying is what we're going to do. Now, some folks like to take their scissors and cut the whole backbone out. I don't really like doing that. I like to go with my big knife, go right down the middle of the backbone. These bones aren't that hard. And that way the bones are all there to kind of hold it all together. So if you start with, think about where that tail is, and you want to go right down the middle. And even if you don't have a knife like this, you're going to be able to do it. It just may take a little more elbow grease from you. And that's all. So now I open it up. And now this one happened to split itself. That happens sometimes. But we've got this cartilage right here, and then there's a little red bone right in here. And with your hands, you can usually pull it out. See that? That's the little red bone. You want to get that out of there because it's just going to be a problem later when you go to carve. but also that bone will make some of the chicken get pretty red. And you probably know that some people get scared and they think the chicken's raw if it gets a little red. And the nature of cooking barbecue, it does get red. So that bone, it can be a problem. So get that out of there. And then the cartilage too, there's that white cartilage piece right here. Take your knife and just be real gentle, because you don't want to split the chicken all the way. There you go, that's all I took out of there. So now I really have essentially just got 2 chicken halves, and when I need to cut it later, it's going to be real easy because there's no bones in there. Now take the wings and tuck them behind, just like he's laying on the beach like this. And that way them little tips will stay out of the way. And that's a nicely spatchcocked chicken. If there's like some little extra skin, don't get crazy about cutting everything off. It's going to shrink up as it cooks. But that one's ready to go. I'll show you one more time. This is the chicken, backside up. There's his tail. Now this time I'll take the smaller knife. Now this is still a pretty sharp knife, but I'm going to tell you it's not as hard as you might think to cut down the middle of that. Now this one I got a little bit off center and I didn't split the neck, but that's okay. A little bit of bone on there is going to help hold the whole thing together. Now right in the middle, you see the white cartilage right there. I'm going to cut around that. And then this red bone. It's got a little hook on it, so you got to kind of yank at it and get it out of there. There we go. Now we tuck the wings back behind again. See the tip? Take that tip, tuck it back behind. This will keep the wing from burning up too, the little wing tip. It'll cook a lot more even. It just makes it look a little nicer. Okay, chickens are done. Now it's time to put them in the brine. All right, my brine is back. It's ice cold. That's how you want it to be. I got a little bit of ice left floating in there. That's okay. You got to be cold when it goes in. So my chickens are just going to go in. 4 chickens. I made about 1 gallon of brine, and that should be fine. If you're making just 1 chicken, you could even try to brine it in like a zip bag. Just be careful with the bones sticking out. Now you want to make sure everything stays submerged. And the way to do that is you take a nice heavy plate like this, put it on top. Now it's all underwater. This needs to go at least 12 hours, up to 24. You don't want to go a whole lot longer than that. We'll get it then. I took my chickens out of the brine this morning. They've been in about 18 hours. That's perfect. And I rinsed them off good. You don't want to soak them in water because that would draw all the brine back out. But you want to rinse it off the outside. You don't want it on the skin, all the brine, salty, briny stuff. And then make sure you clean up the sink real good. Raw chicken is a dangerous thing. You got to get these on the pan, clean that up first before you do anything else. And now we're going to season them. I'm going to cook them 2 ways. I've got this egg set up indirect, and this egg is set up to cook direct. I'm going to cook them 2 different ways. I like it both ways. They're going to be pretty different though. This is going to be more like a roasted smoked chicken. This one's going to get kind of grilled up. So whatever you're in the mood for that day. For my indirect chickens, I'm going to use the citrus herb seasoning. The Big Green Egg citrus herb. Good stuff, goes really well on chicken. Now see, when you do this, make sure you get underneath where the leg is hiding, because I'm going to eat that leg. It's going to taste good. And same thing here. Make sure you tuck under the wing, under the leg, and get the seasoning everywhere. Now for this indirect chicken, if you want to let it rest overnight in the refrigerator after you took it out of the brine, it helps the skin dry out, and it's going to help make the skin a little crispier. But for me, if you really want crispy skin, this is a tough way to do it. Do it this way. Do the direct one. The texture of the meat will be different though. This will have a nice smoky, I put some applewood in there. This indirect one will have a nice smoky flavor. The meat will be nice and soft and juicy. This will be more like grilled chicken. I really do like them both, and it depends on the day. And if you've got 2 eggs, cook them both at the same time. Okay, one of the things when you're working with chicken and food in general, this hand's clean. I haven't touched the chicken yet with this hand. Especially when you're baking, sometimes you try to do that. Because I don't want to touch this handle with my chicken juice hand. So I got this one clean. Now this egg is set up indirect, convector in there, with some apple chunks at about 350. I don't want it any higher than that. 3 to 350 is fine. See, I still got my clean hand to handle the handle. I'm going to use the new Big Green Egg Nashville Hot chicken seasoning. Well, it's not just for chicken, but that's what, when we think of Nashville Hot, we think of chicken, but you can use this on just about anything. And this is going to go real well for my grilled chicken. You can see it's obviously a lot different than the citrus herb. And like anything I show you, I often show you things in 2s like this, but feel free to trade them out. If you want to put this rub on that chicken, by all means do that. I like to show folks that there's more than one way to do things right. When we talk about cooking spatchcock chicken, should you cook it direct or indirect? The answer is yes. Either way works well. They're just a little different. What do you feel like that day? This Nashville Hot Rub's got a nice color to it too, doesn't it? Bright orange. Still got a clean hand. This egg is about almost 400, around between 350 and 400. Don't get crazy over a few degrees, but that's about where I want it. And this one's direct. I'm going to cook these right over the coals. Obviously, this is going to cook a lot faster. There may be some crunchy edges. I'm not mad about that. I'll eat those. So this one here is good for about an hour, and then I'll probably flip it for about a half hour and it should be done. These are going to go a lot quicker. I'm going to keep flipping these about every 10 to 15 minutes. I'm going to keep flipping them and we'll see what they look like. If it's getting a little crunchy on one side, I'll turn the temp down. These are going to take all my attention. We'll be back in 15. It's been about 15 minutes. I'm going to take a look at my direct chickens. The indirect ones, I'm not worried about those for a while. They're going to be just fine. But these are going to get a little heat on the bottom. Nothing cooks direct at a low temp like a Big Green Egg though. You couldn't do this on most grills without burning these chickens up. Look at that. That's exactly what it should look like. That's beautiful. A little bit of caramelization, we want that. But nothing's burning up here. That one too. Now you got to be a little more careful when you flip them over though, because now we got the skin side and there's a lot of fat that will come out. So we got to keep an eye on these, but they're probably good for another 15 and then we'll flip them again. All right, it's been about another 15. You want to keep an eye on these direct ones. I want them to get nice and caramelized up, but I don't want to burn them, and there's a fine line. See, we're getting a little color on there. That's good. That one's got a little more, but that's just fine. I think I'll move this. You know, if you got something like this going on, just move this one to a little cooler spot and move this one to the warm spot. I don't mind these getting crispy. Another 15, we'll flip them again. All right, it's time to flip my direct chickens again. You want to take their temp too. I can tell you, look at it, isn't that great? That's what they should look like. I took the temp of these and they're getting pretty close. So now I'm willing to do that last flip, and when the skin's ready, they'll be done. I'm going to flip the indirect ones now too. It's been about 45 minutes. They're getting to be a pretty good temp. My egg's been a little hotter than I meant, but that's okay. You can see you got a little bit of brownage on here, but it's a very different way to cook them. Now the skin should get a little bit cooked by flipping them over for another 15 or 20 minutes, but it's not going to be like those. It's just different, whichever one you're in the mood for. All right, my direct chicken should be done. It's been 45 minutes to an hour. You really want to use your thermometer, and I've been checking them along the way. But this is what they look like cooked direct, and this is not, I'm not sorry about that at all. That's exactly what I want it to look like. If you don't think that skin looks like you want to eat it, you can dine at my house, because I'm going to eat that skin for sure. My wife would fight you for that. These are beautiful. This is the direct one. These are going to take a little bit longer because they were cooking indirect. I'm going to let these rest. In about 15, we should have these next to them. All right, it's been about another 15, and now my indirect ones are up to temp. They just take a little bit longer, but not that much. Now they're going to look pretty different, but that's the fun of it. Those look pretty good too. It's certainly a different look. If you wanted to set your egg up to cook direct, you could finish these up with a nice finish like this. I just like the idea. If I'm in the mood for a crispy, crunchy one, I'm going this way. If I want a classic kind of a roasted, smoked one, that looks pretty good too. That's spatchcock chicken 2 ways. So we got these beautiful spatchcock chickens cooked. So now what do you do with them? How do you serve them? It's a little cumbersome whole. Well, because of the way I cut the bone out of the middle, it's easy to cut them in half. And then you can just go right for 1/4. And that's a nice portion. I think most folks would be happy with that. Now this one, I'm going to cut a little further. So we cut it in half. And frankly, you could serve halves. I wouldn't be offended if you gave me that whole half. But we could cut it now, like all the way down. Because we got, with half the bones out, it's a little easier. So now we're going to cut this one into 8 pieces, a classic chicken cut. There's a thigh. Now what I did is I left a little bit of the breast meat on there with the wing, because I felt sorry for that guy getting the wing. But that's a nice breast piece there too. So once again, you cut it into quarters. Cut the leg from the thigh. And now here where the wing is, you just cut a little bit, cheat a little bit onto the breast meat. The bones are all pretty forgiving right about now. And that's how you cut those up.